So my name is Richard, or Rickards. I work as a PE teacher in the south part of Sweden. I've been done that for 11 years after examining from the Swedish School of Sport and Health Sciences. But I'm also doing a PhD since 3 years ago. And this is my research, teacher's documentation of student achievements in Swedish PEH, an impossible equation, one may ask as a question. So, before I go into to the real study, I have to understand the problem of this study and teaching in physical education in Sweden. I must begin with describing this problem that I have been investigating from a Swedish perspective. The Swedish school system has a long tradition of high-stakes assessment in primary school as a selection basis for admission into secondary school and then later to higher education. And also in secondary school, the grades in PE have the same value as in other subjects for admission to higher education. And since 2011, both primary school and secondary school in Sweden have a new national curriculum and a new grade system, where students get grades from A to F in the end of each semester or course. And there are pre-established knowledge requirements for each course or each subject. So, as a consequence of the increased control of the Swedish school system compared with the previous national curricula, there has also been an increasing focus on how teachers collect information for grading in terms of a legally secure and reliable assessment practice. Which leads us into the background for this research, that is in several Swedish research projects about the school subject physical education and health in Sweden. The process of assessment and documentation emerges as difficult. And the results from a lot of research is that assessment and grading is largely based on observation and teachers' gut feeling, even though a reliable assessment process requires some form of documentation. Well, I saw that Alan used the word documentation, but when I have done my literature review, it has been really hard because the expression documentation that we use in Sweden can't really be found in the same way in the international texts. What we mean with the word documentation are the process of how teachers collect information about the student knowledge, which means the saved information that is at hand when grading. And due to the problems of using this word of documentation, the keywords that I have used instead in my literature review are associated with assessment, as assessment tools, assessment strategies, assessment techniques, and assessment instruments. So, what is the problem then that this study investigates? Well, as one teacher says, how will I have time to document the student's knowledge at the same time as I leave the class? I have 30 students per class, 8 classes and short time between lessons. When would I have time to document? And maybe an obvious question, but still, what should we document? These 3 questions are quite common among the teachers in my interviews, but they could also represent my own questions and feelings in my work as a PE teacher prior to this project. So So the aim of this study is to examine how teachers in the Swedish primary and secondary school document the students' knowledge and how this work is perceived based on different conditions. And the theoretical frameworks that I've been using consist of curriculum theory with a focus on frame factors in relation to the transformation and realization of the subject content. And then also what type of pedagogic practice that has been made visible, visible or invisible pedagogy. So the data collection for this research has been done in 2 steps. In the first part of the data collection, 144 PE teachers completed a survey about their perceptions to the documentation process. And the teachers came from different parts of Sweden. They taught at different ages, both in primary and secondary school. There were a spread on how long they have worked as teachers, how old they were, a division between the sexes. And one purpose of the survey was to get a picture of how teachers work with documentation. But the survey also formed the basis for the selection of teachers into the next part of the study, the interviews, and also constituted background material for the question asked to the teachers. So the second part of the data collection was conducted as semi-structured interviews with 10 PE teachers about the documentation in physical education and health. So, the results show that a large majority of the teachers experience the documentation of students' knowledge as difficult, and that the main obstacles consist of frame factors as time, class numbers, and schedule. And in this diagram, I have organized, it's a little bit small, but I'll talk you through it. I've organized the frame factors into 3 categories: the curriculum frames, organizational frames, and teaching frames. And as you can see, the main obstacles consist of the organizational frames as time, class numbers, and schedule, followed by teaching frames, which is knowledge about assessment, assessment tools, subject content, and planning of teaching and assessment. The teachers, however, they had a broad repertoire of documentation methods that they used. But the analysis indicates that the teacher's documentation of the students' performances is guided by what is possible to document, rather than what the policy stipulates according to learning objectives. But at the same time, 13% of the teachers did not experience any difficulties. And an interesting question then is why? Is there any differences between them and the other teachers? And in that case, what kind of differences can we see here? So it went clear that an exception emerged among some of the teachers interviewed. And that was the teachers whose transformation and realization of the subject content differed whose transformation and realization of the curriculum into daily teaching clearly differs from the other teachers. And these systematic planners, I've used the expression from Gibbs, they decide already in the planning stage of teaching what content should be assessed, how it should be made, what information will be collected and documented, and which is key characteristics of visible pedagogy. And for these systematic planners, the frame factors that I mentioned earlier did not constitute major obstacles in teaching and assessment. So what can we then say about this? Well, due to significant change of the national curriculum of Swedish PE over the last 20 years, PE teachers have problems transforming the curriculum into daily practice. which often leads to an invisible pedagogy. Teaching is often characterized by a wide variety of content, but with very few lessons per activity, and sometimes we call it the Swedish smorgasbord. And the collision between the realization of the subject and the increased demands for a legally secure assessment practice is by many teachers perceived as an impossible equation. Having enough time to document the student's knowledge of a specific subject content delivered in very few lessons is a problematic area. However, in the perspectives of the systematic planners, with perhaps 6 to 8 lessons, longer work periods, in the same area of teaching, this does not seem to be such a problem. So, what is the recipe for success that has been made visible in the results of this research? Well, the teachers in this study who did not experience any difficulties according to the documentation process has had a teaching practice that almost consistently followed this approach. That first, they had a clear planning of what that student may have access to prior to a period of work, where it specifies the goal for the area, what students are expected to learn, how teaching will be organized, and how students' knowledge will ultimately be judged. Then work starts with a number of lessons where the teacher just focuses on teaching and not on evaluation and documentation for the assessment. They just teach. And then follow lessons where students are free to practice what they are supposed to learn, and where they also have the opportunity to fail without being afraid that their mistake would be assessed for later grading. And here the teachers also has time to help students and provide formative assessment. Students may work with peer assessment and help each other. And these teachers believe that not everything has to need to be done in one semester. That's often the case in Sweden, that teachers feel that, oh, we have to put everything together, we have to do everything in one semester. And when working in longer work areas, they have the time to really assess knowledge and not just the activities. The final lessons then are devoted to summative assessment or examinations, where the students will demonstrate in various ways the knowledge through theoretical or practical tests, performances in front of teacher, maybe recorded material, as I do today, flipped classrooms, and the teachers will have a clear basis for the assessment documented further grading, and students will have been given good opportunities to develop their knowledge and skills within the area that has been treated. But previous research within the Swedish PEH has shown that students are not always given the opportunity to practice on the content addressed in teaching, and that teachers often assess students while teaching takes place, maybe in the first 2 or 3 lessons. So the key to success seems to be to provide both teaching, assessment, and documentation more time. So to sum up, these results are nothing new. It's nice when you get these results. It's nothing new. They can be found both in previous research and particularly in Sweden. Sweden, also in state recommendation and guidance of teaching procedures. So what is then the contribution of this particular research? Well, I think it is to point to the importance to shift the focus, especially in Sweden, where teachers nowadays have a narrow focus on the documentation process. So here I try to, the contribution is to point at the importance to shift focus from the documentation per se to teachers' planning and teaching processes, i.e. the transformation of the curriculum into daily practice. And a contribution is also to show that this process is fully possible, because often teachers, they refer to the guidance and say, well, welcome out in the reality. This is not possible in my reality as teachers. But as I have seen here, the teachers in my study, who I call the systematic planners, that shown that teachers' documentation of students' achievements in Swedish PE can be seen as an impossible equation. And with that said, I finish short. And maybe there are one.
The bonus not efficient, sure, he's got more time to answer.
Yeah. Eric, he bought some time on me yesterday.
Thanks, Rickard. I'm not sure this is a question really, but it's probably worthwhile giving Peter Hayes' work a bit more attention. You can probably download his doctoral thesis from the University of Queensland website. Now, the cohort of teachers that he worked with admittedly were working in the senior part of the school, but nonetheless they had very well integrated processes around Bernstein's message systems. They had very well integrated documentation systems for assessing students, and still those teachers used gut feeling to make judgments about the children. And I just wonder whether you need to try and get underneath the skin of how and why teachers make decisions about students and what that might actually mean. What is it when they make a judgment, and what does that judgment actually mean? Because even in a system where it's a highly systematized structure of assessment, Peter still found that teachers kind of use the feel of the thing to give students their grades. So it's just something worth thinking about.
We were discussing this prior to this conference, and a colleague of mine who has also been studying assessment, she discussed, well, should we leave our gut feeling and just go on the... But you really can't, because as a teacher, and particularly a PE teacher, you often get a feel of the students, but at the same time only rely to the gut feeling and not have anything to in this process now where the demands are that you have to show some I don't know the expression, but you have to show something for the students, the parents, the school, and this is my this is what I built my grades on. So, but also when I have studied it, because my first question was, how should we manage to do this within our practice of teaching? And as a result, when I started to investigate this, it became clear that, well, it's not possible the way we, or many of us, teach today in these small units. And we then think that we have to document everything, to use Gibbs again, the evidence collectors. So teachers just collect evidence all the time, and not really questioning what evidence is that I collect. Is it reliable? Is it even worth taking notes on?
Can I say one thing, just picking up from what you said there, and while we've got Haneen down there, pretty sharp. Haneen's published a really interesting paper. The one thing about one of the 6 simultaneous, using that notion that, that an event like assessment can be sort of simultaneously viewed in 6 different ways. And you are sort of interested in that concept there, that yes, that one perspective is the teacher's trying to produce some information about student performance, but then you also said that simultaneously this person is actually trying to produce data that fits in with some sort of professional performance.
Yeah.
And perhaps another simultaneity in there is that, and that's what I was trying to listen to, whether there is, let's sideline all of that and just produce information which will feed into the learning process and help enhance. And I just wondered if that was possible to add into that.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that I have. I have to continue because I have only interviewed teachers, but now what is interesting would be to follow up and observe the teachers and see, okay, this is what you have said that you're doing. How does it look like, and what are you really doing? But what also, I dropped your question there.
Anyone else? We've still got time.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. Very complicated issue. There might have nothing to do with tacit knowledge. One's about the use of your terms right at the beginning of your presentation there, about the use of the word tools and instruments. Are you separating those, or do you think an instrument is a tool?
Yeah, I don't think I have separated them, but when I read a lot of articles, I really tried to look at what is the documentation process here, and what works have they done. So to get as large material as possible, I have used different expressions to see, okay, what have been made visible here. And what I don't mention here, that a lot of the articles were American, because there were a focus on the techniques, the right strategies, or a lot of tools, how to connect things. And with that said, I've tried to, okay, this is an American perspective of it. I know that, and I don't have to. It doesn't really fit into our Scandinavian or Australian English
That's right,
perspective.
So can you think of a word in Scandinavian that covers all those in just one word, like rotten or something?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's difficult because when you use the word documentation, but when I did a search on that expression, it was more of video documentation. In Sweden, when we use documentation, it's often 2 results that came up. Pedagogic documentation, that is often used in kindergarten, or the more official documentation, as the school documentation. Not everyday practice of teachers collecting information about students' performances. So it's a tricky question, how to. If I should have been, doing this all over again, I think I have been asking different questions and maybe used another entrance to this. problems.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a suggestion, because there's an enormous amount of information about assessment on the websites for every education authority, and you find out information there about how teachers are actually supposed to implement assessment and how they're supposed to put all these processes into practice and come up with their own results. And I just think those things are worth looking at the same time as you're looking at research, because obviously they're research-based.
But what I thought was interesting here, when I'm discussing with teachers, they often feel like, well, these guidances, they're not achievable. But what I can, as a practicing teacher, PE teacher, I think pointing at this, well, now I have found some teachers here, and they have described a practice that looks like this, and in that practice, this is fully possible. So what differs their practice to your practice? Okay, maybe we have to shift the focus from, the documentation process. I have the document. Okay, maybe you have to do something about the practice, teaching practice, how you plan and put up your teaching, and not just try to fix the damage after. Okay. Take that.
I think it's really worth pointing out how Swedish PEH made great strides as soon as they talked about people had a sit on a stool problem. I wasn't too sure if it was that or whether it was a really clever slide of showing an assessment process to some students, but sit on the seat properly, and these are the ones that failed.
This is the being gymnastics.